Hi, SwampCon. I'm Anna Jano. I am an artist in Tampa. I grew up in Gainesville, so this convention is really like dear to my heart. And I'm going to show you how to make enamel pins today. I've been making enamel pins since about 2018, and I've made 6 of them so far. And I'll show you really quick. These are some of the ones I've made. This fox one was my first one. Same with this one. I learned a lot on these. And then I moved to the owl. And then last year, these guys, the koi, squirrel, and mushroom, are my new ones. So today I'm going to show you how this one, the squirrel, came to be, from like all the way from concept sketch to finalized pin. Hope you enjoy following along. I know that some of this might be a little outside of the skill set, or not skill set, let me see, it might be outside of the scope of what some people might want to do, but you can also apply a lot of this to stickers. But I do want to show you just exactly how I did it. I know there might be some other ways to do it, but I'll kind of show you why I did things the way I did, and let's get to it. Before we get into exactly how I made the squirrel pin, I want to just go over a few key points about what makes a good pin. And so I'll show you some of the pins that I've bought. I'm not a huge pin collector, but I've learned to like really love them. And so I bought some that are just dear to my heart, like this roly-poly pin. And what makes this one great is it hits like almost all the key points about what I think makes a good pin. So it has a great silhouette. You can tell from far away that that is a roly-poly or an isopod. The other point is that it has really strong line work. So for pins and mostly pins, but stickers too, you really do want to have just really defined line work, because the lines become your metal parts. If you start with a good line design, it'll translate well to a pin. And then this also has really simple colors. And with pins, you're going to be charged more for more colors. It depends on the manufacturer, but they'll probably give you a handful of colors for a flat fee. But once you get like to over probably 5, you're going to start paying more for colors. This one was great. It's really subtle. They actually use 3 colors. There's two blacks and there's a white. But you could almost get away with just 2 colors on this, which is just a great design, in my opinion. Also related to the silhouette is it looks good from far away. You can tell what it is from far away. That one was made by an artist called Nicole. I'll show her card because I found her online randomly, and I think she's amazing. And then I had 2 other pins that inspired me before I started making pins. Naomi Van Doren is another artist that I just loved her pins. This was one I got at DragonCon one year. And it seems counterintuitive to me because the silhouette is okay, but it still works because she has really good contrast in the colors, so that the subject really pops out. So she designed it that way. The line work is just really cool and defined, and she has simple colors. So that was the one I thought was neat. This one has a really strong design silhouette. But I just think it's just one color, actually. Oh, they do have some highlight colors in the stars, which is, I just noticed that. That's cool. And this was a Kickstarter by Joy Addict that was running at the same time I was running my Kickstarter. I just thought it was really cool. So those are some of my favorite pins that I've bought. One more point about silhouettes. I'll show you a design that I thought would make a really great pin. This was a couple years ago. I thought it would be a great pin because I sell a lot of this print, and I think it's a fun design as a print. And you'll see on the screen here that these yin yang kitties is what I call it. Looks decent as a large image, and you can tell what they are. But when I started to try to shrink it down and simplify it for a pin, you'll see it starts to get kind of ambiguous. And then when you think about pins, they could look great, really large, but when you're going to be wearing them on your backpack or shirt or wherever, it's going to be about this size. And there's no way, you can't tell what this is. You can't see they're cats. So I had to just kind of scratch that design and move on to something else. But so that's an example of something that can look good large, But when you start getting towards pin scales, you gotta really make sure that you're paying attention to how something looks. So I had to scrap this design and I moved on to, I think it was the owl pin I made this year that I did this one. But I wanted this one to work so bad, but I just couldn't get it. So let's go now into how I started the squirrel pin design. I'll tell you what I use. But you can do this with a lot fewer tools than what I used. You can use a pen and a pencil and a scanner, and you can end up with a pin. But what I like to do, I like to have control over a lot of the process. So I do a lot of what some of the manufacturers would do for you. I work digitally now, and so I do all my drawings digitally. And so lucky for you, I have all like the files that I use for this and all the layers, and we'll go through all the embarrassing sketches that we used to get the squirrel pin done. So the first step is figuring out what you want to design. I love squirrels. And so when I knew I wanted to make a squirrel. And so the next step is start drawing squirrels. So I got this whole Pinterest board of squirrels. We'll go to my Pinterest page and I'll show you the exact board that I used for this design. Squirrels. So I knew I wanted to make a red squirrel. I found all these cute, adorable pictures of red squirrels. And I started sketching these. I'll show you the Photoshop file of some of the sketches of these guys. And again, this is the pin we made. This is the pin that it eventually became. All right, the Photoshop file is open. This is, like, I'll just tell you, my sketch phase is so embarrassing that I don't like to show it to many people because they think I can't draw. Like, I just scribble squirrels, like general squirrel shapes until I find one that I like, and then I'll refine it. So really, these are just scribbles. I mean, even like, you'll laugh. Oh, oops. Like, this is a squirrel, believe it or not. But I think this is the one I eventually started liking. And so I think this is what ended up getting refined on some of the next layers. So this one happened pretty quickly. I only did, what was that, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, around 8 or 9 sketches before I was like, oh, this one's inspiring me. So I put it onto another layer. Yeah, that is the one. Started playing with shapes for the mushroom and kept refining, because what I would do is I would put this layer at a lower opacity and then start drawing over again. So now we're getting closer to what that pin looked like. And again, your process might be different. You might be able to draw this right away, or you might be doing this on paper and you have to draw it over again. Whatever works for you, go for it. Here's cleaner lines. So now I'm trying to get towards cleaner lines. And I believe, we have a layer called Final Sketch. Again, it's not looking great right now, is it? But it's a squirrel on a mushroom. And I know where generally the shapes are going to be. I wanted to make sure that the silhouette was really clear. That I could squint and I could tell that this is a mushroom and a squirrel. He was faced away from the camera so that you could kind of see the separation in his paws, if you can see. So if he was faced toward the camera, he would be all squished up like this, and he would just, in the pin, be kind of a blob, right? But I wanted him like this, where he would be a cool cutout shape, with his ears clearly separated. Here you can see the tail clearly comes over, and the mushroom, I think I play with the mushroom shape a lot later, but now I believe what I did was I put the opacity down on this, and I wanted to get to the line work phase and start really cleaning up the lines. Let's turn this on and turn this off. There. It looks like I did the layers separately. The mushroom and the squirrel are separate. So I used a color of pen that I knew I wanted gold in my pen, so I started using gold lines. Another trick I do is I always work on a gray background, because you want to make sure your pen looks good on a variety of surfaces. Gray is pretty neutral. If I work on a white background, you start forgetting where the background actually is when you're working. And if I work on a black background, sometimes I get confused about contrast. But I found gray really works, especially when you're on the next phase too, when you're working with colors, because You want a neutral color in the background to help you see the ones you're working on. So back to the line work. I try to make really clean lines here, being expressive lines, but still not being too precious with it. And then we got the mushroom. So now I can make this go away. And then I had to start deciding on colors. So again, like I said, I wanted simple colors. This might be the most complicated pin I made, actually, and I think about it color-wise, because there are actually 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 colors, if I'm counting those right. And it looks like I did change some of the mushroom there. That was the final mushroom. If you don't have Photoshop, you can always just send a sketch to the manufacturer, and they will help. Like, they will work with a designer with you. So the designer will digitize the line work and help you pick colors and really do that end of it for you. I like to have control over the process, so I do it myself. So if you do want to submit a file, a finished file to your manufacturer, the next step would be to vectorize it, which is going to be in a program like Adobe Illustrator, or I can't remember you remember what GIMP is? Or there's some free vector programs I'll try to remember. Maybe if there's a way for me to put links anywhere, I'll try to put links. But you want to vectorize that for your manufacturer. And so what I did was I exported my line work from Photoshop and brought it into Illustrator and did a trace. And I'll show you what that looked like here. So this is after it's been traced by Illustrator. And then a lot of times I don't trust Illustrator. I have to go in here and start tweaking lines, but you'll have your own process, but that's just what I do. And then you can start filling in colors. And this is the file that I sent to the manufacturer of what I wanted. And I picked the Pantone numbers. So if you are lucky enough to have a Pantone swatch guide like I do, I'm a graphic designer in another part of my life, so I actually had Pantones. You can pick the colors. And this is what your manufacturer uses. They are actual just colors that they can order inks from, and it's going to look exactly like what's on this card. So I give them the numbers of the colors that I want. Each manufacturer is a little different. They might have more or less colors available, but they'll work with you and we'll get close to it. Again, if you don't have that, you can give them the best estimate of what you want. Turn this layer off like this. This would be great. I could send this to them and they would try to pick based on the colors that they have, anything like close to this. And then usually they're pretty good. There's another important item that you should be considering, and I usually do this a little later in the design, but you can be doing it earlier, is the size of your pen. It's going to be really important to consider that when you start designing, because it's going to determine your price. The larger the pin, obviously, the more expensive it is to manufacture, and it's going to determine how many design elements you can put in. The squirrel here is the largest pin I've ever designed. I think it was 1.5 inches. So once you have the design size figured out, you can start playing with the tolerances of the spaces of your colors, because I'll show you a video in a second, or some screenshots in a second, of what the manufacturer actually is doing. What it really is a person has a syringe of each color and dips or squirts your color into each area of the pin. So the smaller the area of your pin, the harder it is for them to do that. And once it gets too small, it's just not possible to get ink in there. Or I should say, it's not possible to get enamel in there without problems. Your manufacturer will have a design tolerance, basically, of the smallest area that you can put enamel. I believe that this circle here was very close to that design tolerance when the pin was whatever size I made it, 1.75. So if it was smaller than that, I could either make that area a little bit bigger, or I can make the pin bigger. So you could see how a very detailed design could become very large really quickly. So that's another reason you want to keep the line work simple. Just keep everything simple, and you'll be on the right track. The other design issue you have to watch out for are open areas. So there's also a minimum area that an open area can be. Like this spot on my squirrel between his legs is really pretty tiny. And I had to make sure that that was large enough for when they made the molds where they could cut out the metal that small. There was another area here, I'm not even sure, we might have changed this in the final design, where this was getting small. It was going to be hard for them to cut this part out. And I've had to change also my fox spirit pin. I had to work a lot with them to make these legs work, because I was new. I didn't know that I had to watch out for these things, and I really had to redesign how far that leg came apart, because I think I originally designed it a really small sliver, and there was just no way that manufacturing process was going to work for them. But again, your manufacturer will help you through these things. And if you're making stickers, this is not a problem for you. You can do whatever you want. So once you get to the end of the design process with your manufacturer, they will send you what they call a digital proof, which is a term from printing. Back in the day, if you wanted something printed, the printer would give you a physical copy of what it was going to look like before they did the whole run. Now, most of the manufacturers that do pins are in China, and it's just not physically possible, or I mean, it's possible, but it's not convenient to send a proof for. Plus, they have to make a whole mold for it. So what you get is a digital proof, which is a PDF of an example, like a mock-up of how your pin will look. And I'll show you how the squirrel proof looked when they sent it to me. Which I was so happy when this came. I was like really excited. And you'll see they show you all the parts that'll be cut out, and how your line work will look, where each color is, what the name of the Pantones are. I got my name stamped on the back of them. That was something that the manufacturer did, which was pretty cool. So they also worked with me about where to put the posts for pinning into your shirt. This one, since it was such a off balance design, really, we ended up having to put 2 posts, because otherwise it would swing around when you put it on your shirt. So we had to figure out where to put the posts, and they showed me what to scale it would look like. So this one was actually at 1.75 inches. So that was cool. And then they sent it to China to make. And that's what I want to talk to you about next, is how do you find a manufacturer? And that's kind of a tricky topic. I've worked with 2 manufacturers now, and the last one I worked with, I was just super happy with. They've made 4 of my pins now. Yes, 4. They are called Pin Source, and they have what you would call a middleman in the U.S. So I worked with the U.S. company, who then works with the factory in China. And so the U.S. company is the one who helped me with the design. They were the one that sent me the digital proof, and then they work out with the factory in China how to get it to me. And I don't have to deal with the Chinese side of it. Now, if you want to save a little bit of money, but it's a lot more work, you can go through like Alibaba and find your own Chinese pin manufacturer and work with them directly. And but that comes with its own set of problems, which I'm not going to go into, but you can look it up. That I just wasn't comfortable doing that right now. Maybe I will in the future. And maybe if I had a larger order, I don't know. Which brings me to the barrier to entry of the cost of it all, because most manufacturers require you to have at least 50. That's actually, if you're lucky, if you can find one, to make 50 pins. Yeah, there's usually a minimum order of about 100. So you have to really make sure that you want this thing made, because on their end, it's not an easy process for them either. They have to make a whole mold of your design, which can be reused if you reorder it. But if you're just going to make 1 or 2 pins, they have to make a whole mold. It's a lot of labor for them, so I don't blame them for asking for minimum orders. So just have that in mind when you want to make a pin. That it's going to be a little bit of upfront cost.
They may be tiny, but they're out there in huge numbers. This one company turns out about 5 million lapel pins a year. It all starts with a sketch of the pin design, and from that, the master, a negative made of magnesium, a type of metal. They'll make copies of this master to create a production mold. But first, using what's called a coping saw, they cut out the front and back pieces of the master. Using a dispenser about the size of a sewing needle, they glue the pieces together with epoxy. It takes 5 minutes to dry. Then they cast enough copies of the master to fill up a rubber disc. After tracing the outlines, a worker uses a surgical knife to meticulously carve out the cavities. He softens the rubber with paint thinner to enable precision cuts. Then he places a copy of the master in each cavity. Another disc goes on top. Then it's into a machine called a vulcanizer for 1 hour. This machine uses heat and pressure to cure the rubber, making it as hard as a car tire. It also melds the rubber around each master copy, embedding the detail. This will be the production molds for producing this pin design. Now, using a surgical knife again for precision, they carve out sprues, channels that during the casting process will direct the flow of molten metal to the cavities. They also make smaller, curved channels called runners to filter out any air or dirt particles. It's crucial to position the sprues and runners correctly because this mold produces an entire line of a particular pin. Mess up, and they'd have to remake the mold from scratch. Next, they insert a centimeter-long brass tack called a post into each cavity. It'll later fasten to a clasp, attaching the pin to clothing. The post goes in now rather than later so that it will fuse to the back of the lapel pin during casting. Now to close the mold, they align the buttons on one half with the depressions in the other half. The mold then goes into what's called a spin casting machine. Using a cast iron ladle that can withstand the fiery temperature, they pour in molten metal, either pewter, zinc, or a tin alloy. As the machine spins, centrifugal force propels the metal into every nook and cranny of the cavities. After a minute of spinning, 400 rotations, the mold comes out. The metal takes about 5 minutes to cool and harden. The factory remelts the excess metal for the next batch. Next, a brass clasp called a clutch goes onto the post. Now the lapel pins go for an hour-long wash in soap and water and abrasive stones. The stones smooth out any rough edges. The pins go into the electroplating tank for a surface coating of metal. How many coats and the types of metal vary with the design. An electric current draws the metal particles onto the pins, plating them thoroughly. These pins first get copper plating, then nickel plating, then gold plating. Now it's time to paint the lapel pins. Workers follow a numerical guide like a paint-by-numbers kit. They paint each pin individually using minute quantities of epoxy paint. They control the paint syringe with a foot pedal. Once the paint dries, a machine called a pad printer gathers up ink and stamps on the tiny details, the ones too small to paint by hand. Pierce the post through the fabric, secure it with the clutch, and this lapel pin is now ready to wear.
The other thing you should take into consideration is the time for manufacturing. It's going to be a minimum of 4 weeks if you're lucky, but it's probably going to be about 6 weeks because, again, they have to set up the mold, they have to make all the pins, they have to go put the enamel in all the little spots, and then it has to be shipped from China to here. And mine came, I was pretty impressed how many pins they got. And I bet this was nearly 250 pins, and they all fit in here. They came in a box. I watched it go across the ocean. It took a long time. The other thing you're gonna decide early on is, are you gonna make a hard enamel pin or a soft enamel pin? And it's all kind of depends on the look that you're going for. Soft enamel is usually a little cheaper. It doesn't involve as much labor for them by a small margin. And it looks like the enamel is actually it's not flush with the surface of the pin. It's not a polished surface. You can see the dips of where the fluid kind of got stuck on the sides. Or it's kind of a cool look. My first pins were soft enamel pins, and hard enamel, you're going to have a kind of a polished surface. It's going to be flat to the touch on the top. It depends on just what you want to get. I prefer the look of hard enamel pins now, and that's usually what I get. I'll try to find some pictures, and I'll put those up on the screen for you to see the differences. The cost of those are also gonna be a little different. Soft enamel is a little more affordable. Hard enamel is a little more on the pricier end. Once your pins do arrive, it's time to do a little bit of quality control checks. I've had some mixed results, even from the same manufacturers. I don't know if they changed factories. Yeah, sometimes the pins are flawless, and sometimes the cutouts of the metal aren't as clean. Like they didn't either sand it down as much. There'll be little jaggies on the edge. Which is also something to consider in your design, because again, on my Spirit Fox design, the tolerances I had of these spaces that they had to cut out were so small that the metal would start, they had trouble cleaning out the spaces in the metal. So those are something to look at. Sometimes the enamel has scratches. Sometimes the enamel the colors are on the wrong spot. Like sometimes if they mess up pretty bad, then you'd have to send it back. I've never had that, but I've had drips in weird places. So you just gotta, before I sell it, I try to give them a look over, and I just kind of set aside that a certain percentage of these are going to be kind of weird, and I'll end up selling those for a discounted price later. But I do like to try to look at the pins and make sure that they have good quality before I put them for sale. The manufacturer I used the last few times was called Pin Source, and I'll show you their website really quick because I thought they were fun to work with. Yeah, I used their custom lapel pin and then hard enamel pin option, and you can go there, check them out, see what the options they are that you can use. They have some cool things. Seems like they're always trying to improve. Right now, I recommend them. The last time I got something from them was about a year ago. So I don't know post-COVID if anything's changed, but they do send me promotional things every now and then. So they're still around. The other final touch that I like to put is a backer card. I like to put the pins on backer cards because I think it makes them look fun, and it's easier for me to store them when I'm trying to sell them and pull them out. This was a design I had from an old piece that just happened to work. It was a tree. And some manufacturers will tell you that they'll do this for you, which is fine. It would be a lot less labor. I tend to like to design them myself, and I use a local printer. This was a square business card. Ended up being cheaper for me to do it that way than have my manufacturer add per pin cost to my order. Some people like to put them in bags too, but lately I've just been keeping them on backer cards, and I'm happy with them. That I think is everything I wanted to say. If you have any questions, I do have a Discord. I'm not quite sure how SwampCon's doing this. I have to submit this about a month before the convention. So find me on the Discord at SwampCon. I'll have a table there. Come chat. Ask me questions about enamel pins. Check out my website. You can see all the pins I did at annajano.com. And you can see some of my artwork there too. I'm trying to make a special page for SwampCon. So it's not built yet, but it'll be there. It'll be clear how to get there if you go to annajano.com or find me on the SwampCon virtual tables. I'll be hanging out all weekend. So I look forward to talking to you guys. Thanks for stopping in. Bye, guys.